Okay, yeah. T.B.Photo X 1.5 TFX, and welcome back to another video. Yes, I know that I said that the hiatus was over and so on almost half a year ago, but we're actually in a new year now. It's 2023, and yeah, why was I absent for so long? Well, the gist of the matter is that I basically ran out of creativity, and I thought that yeah, I was still doing photography and so on, but unfortunately I didn't think that any of the stuff that I did was good enough to show. Yeah, I even called my little air show video a salvage project, and that's basically what I thought it was. Yeah, but anyway. Well, when you're in a little bit of a creative rut, so to speak, you need to find something to, ignite that creative sparky, and this will actually interest me into take images again, as I used to do. But you have all of your fans of different photographers. For instance, as I've stated many times, I really enjoy Leonard Nilsson for his medical and microscopy work and so on, and his contributions to the field of medicine. You have Joe McNally, National Geographic extraordinaire, Time magazine, you name it. He is a master of all trades and a guru of flash photography. Yeah, so you see, you have all of these guys, and of course you have the inventor, the originator of the zone system, and master landscape photographer extraordinaire Ansel Adams, to just name a few. And you have all of these brilliant photographers that are well versed in their subject and world renowned for their creative endeavors. But then I just heard this name mentioned in passing about this this brilliant studio photographer, commercial photographer, and I got curious, like, I want to know more about this. So that's a little bit what this video is going to be about, and yeah, roll intro. Finding a commercial photographer that inspired me to take images like these. Taking the new kid on the block for a spin. Inspirational material for creating stunning images. A rotating knob. A scientist who looks like a cartoon character. And I'm walking on the ceiling. Yeah, it's been a while since that one as well. But anyway, yeah. It all started with me just searching the name, and I came up with a couple of different results, basically. And yeah, the guy's name is Dean Collins, who was a photographer who lived between 1951 to 2005, where he unfortunately lost his battle with cancer. But anyway, when I started to research a little bit about this guy, Californian guy who had a this guy was a light guru. I mean, I think it's a little bit strange that he's not mentioned more here on YouTube, actually. Most of the stuff, when I search Dean Collins, the majority is basically his own stuff, but very little people who is talking about him, which I think is a bit of a shame. As a little caveat from the intro, the Hasselblad Forum magazine. Yeah, Dean Collins used Hasselblad cameras, among other things, granted, but this is the 50-year anniversary of the Hasselblad V system, or rather the Hasselblad system altogether. So there is all of these, Hasselblad's collaboration with NASA, so there's a lot of insanely interesting space images. And yeah, I think that it is actually this image here on page 18. There is a image from inside the Space Shuttle Orbiter with a bunch of weightless Hasselblad cameras floating around. And yeah, a little bit of a sneak peek to what I might be using in the summertime coming, or at least in spring. This is something that I'm very looking forward to using. yeah, that has been a little bit of a passion project of mine that I wanted to, you know, remake and so on. So it's a little bit reminiscent of some of the ELS cameras that was used during the space shuttle program. But anyway, it wasn't really, you know, and there are a couple of, you know, photographers, renowned Hasselblad users that are featured in this 50-year anniversary. And one other person that is featured is a couple of pages about Ansel Adams that I mentioned in the intro, the well-renowned landscape photographer. But when I was flipping through this magazine actually, and I came to page 34, I had to do a double take because the image text, now it's in Swedish, so I will do my best to do a rough translation. Mike Bishop, I need coffee apparently. Mike Bishop, Vice Research Chief for InfGen, Wisconsin, USA, creator of the world's first cloned bull. But all I see is... Yeah, that's basically what I'm seeing in that image, so it was a little bit of a double take. Is it just me, or do you see the same thing I do? Yeah, anyway, where are those good old-fashioned values on which we used to rely? Anyway, yeah, I think that's all for me for the Hasselblad Forum magazine, but if you are in a little bit of a creative rut, these magazines are still available second-hand on numerous internet auction sites and probably forums as well. Yeah, the name of the magazine itself. But really, I would really recommend anybody to check out Hasselblad Forum magazine if you're a Hasselblad user. Anyway, yeah, Dean Collins, 1953 to 2005. Brilliant photographer that actually had his own newsletter publication and later also video production. So yeah, this is firstly one book that I found about him, and a whole host of other photographers that is basically what made him so unique in the photographic arena, Dean Collins. This is Photographic Global Notes, Volumes 1 and 2, Dean Collins production. So this is a publication with a plethora of different well-renowned photographers, and it talks about different photographic ideas and how-tos, how to get those shots. And they all go about it in the same way as was, I would guess, popularized by Collins in his own publication Fine Light. And yeah, let's see here. First of all, also I found this actually. It's a DVD set for Dean Collins on light. Best of Dean Collins on light. Fine Light video lighting. And it's actually 4 DVDs with video VHS originals that have been transformed into DVDs with about Dean Collins and what he photographed. So let's see, for instance, you have Fine Light Portraiture, your commercial illustrations, let's see here, Fine Light Portraiture large sets, and Fine Light basic lighting. So these are actually brilliant, and I even think that there are a few of these available on YouTube. If I can find them, I will put the links to them in the comment section below, or rather in the video description section below. So if you're interested in seeing a little bit and what have gotten me hooked on this guy and his way of both teaching photography and shooting photography, really recommended a piece of kit. This actually made me very much enthusiastic about taking images of objects. So yeah, the best of Dean Collins on lighting. So yeah, really recommended DVD set. So yeah, let's see, and also I managed to find, because I went on eBay, I became a little bit obsessed, that has to be said. I started to do research on you know, the internet, Google, Dean Collins photography, and a little bit of what I found was actually a LA Times article from 1985 by Hillard Harper that wrote and interviewed Collins about both his production company Fine Light and his video production, and also his on-the-road lectures. And there is even a lecture that I think was available on VHS in the beginning, but maybe also on DVD, when he was at a photographic college and actually lectured and did a lecture about photography and lighting. And yeah, I think that we're actually gonna go and do a demonstration a little bit later on in this video about how he actually did it. So yeah, can you tell I was very much inspired by this person. So yes, okay, so what we have here then is a bunch of the issues of Fine Light that Collins made, and these are then stated newsletters. And during his interview with Hillard Harper in 1985, it turned out that he had about 4,000 subscriptions to the 4,000 people who subscribed to the Fine Light series newsletter globally. And you know, they're printed on very great quality paper. I know that there are some of these on eBay and so on, and what is so great about them is that they fold out, and they're basically a how-to, step-by-step how-to guide in how to make the images made by Collins. And what is also great is that they give you a evolution chart of the light. So depending on how you're adding all the types of reflectors and other light forming and shaping tools, they are actually shown how they go from step to step, and how the final images is produced and how to get there. And also probably one of the quintessential in my, because I haven't seen these in any other publication, but what also was predominantly shown in Photographic Global Notes and also in Fine Light is the diagrams on the backside, because these, in my opinion, are extraordinary. They show actually a complete diagram on how the setup is and how the light is. And the same thing goes again in Best of Dean Collins on lighting, because in all of these publications you're shown in detail how the setup was made and how the photograph was made in step by step, which I think is a brilliant way of showing it. What else do we have here? There are a lot of portraits here, but there are also some, you know, tabletop photography on how to make this, you know. Again, it's about how to set up the situation, what gear is used, what type of film, and so on. It is really interesting to see and read about. So yeah, Fine Light, really appreciated, I would say, publication from this photographer Dean Collins, that I think that he should really be more known about than he is. Maybe this is one of those that the people in the know knows, and the ones, all the rest of us are just taking images. I mean, brilliant folder, brilliant portfolio, I would say, of a body of work, so to speak. But let's move on then, shall we? Okay, during the lecture that Collins did at a photographic school, that I'm gonna link the video in the description, he talks about two things that I think is insanely interesting and cool at the same time. And it's the concept of 3D contrast, and the secondly is about what he called chromazones. Well, this is basically a continuation of the much more known zone system created by Ansel Adams. The zone system, and I actually have a little bit of a cheat sheet here, yeah, and this is just a quote from Collins during the 85 interview by Hillard Harper, and let's see, yeah, quotation from Dean Collins. Ansel Adams saw a range of contrast versus the limits of the film. He took film and placed it to the situation. Commercial photography places the situation to the film. That is basically, yeah, I think that is a very good generalized statement on what it was all about. Well, just to make it a little bit clear, and this is also gone through much more in detail by Collins in that lecture, it is, if you have one of these, this is a Minolta light meter, this is the IVF, so it's the 4th generation, and it is the one that can measure both ambient light and flash. And the good thing with this one is that it both can show a flash that is corded and cordless. So yeah, the difference is, and it's so great that I have both these attachments to it, because this is basically the key to what makes the Chromazone system work, and it is to make an incident light meters with the dome of the light meter and reflected light with this 5-degree spot attachment. Because if you have both of these, you can basically generate any color you want out of anything. So that basically means that you can take a pure black background or a pure white background, according to Collins and this system, and basically make it into any hue that you want to, and that you can get extreme saturation of color. So what we're actually gonna do is that we're gonna make a series of colors on a firstly black background. And what are we gonna use? Well, this is just a SB900 from Nikon. It's a great, brilliant speed light. And after that, we are also going to use the, what is it now, the SU800, which is the flash control unit for the creative lighting system. Talked about this in previous videos. Brilliant piece of kit. You can use it up to 3 different A, B, and C group, and the brilliant piece of kit. And the camera I'm going to be using is actually the new kid on the block, or new old kid on the block. It's the Nikon D3S 12 megapixel full frame professional body, and currently I have the AF Micro Nikkor 60mm f2.8D lens on it. So this little beauty is going to be the camera that is going to take the images. And I think we're now going to go over to the tabletop and talk about it. But before that, we're going to also need to do coloring, and I wanted to duplicate. I don't have the type of Roscoe colors or color gels that Collins used and a lot of brilliant photographers use still today, but I thought I will be able to do this Chromazone system with my own little way. And what did I thought that I could use? Something that I already have that can give us a consistent color palette. And I remember I have these Kokin color filters, and I also have some what are these, and Kenko color filters. So what is so good with these? Well, because you can actually, all of them are named. So this one is the Coffee Plus 3 Red, so P003. So this is a red filter. For instance, you have a green filter, I believe this is, yeah, green filter, and a blue filter. So we have an RGB spectrum here, and I have a yellow filter, blue, and different types of oranges. So these can actually be used because if, for instance, as Collins put it in the lecture, if you have an art director that wants a specific hue of background color, instead of trying to explain it, you can just present this chart with colors and say, oh, I want to pick it. Instead of just going through it, just pick the one you want, because we can reproduce any of these with the way that we use this chromosome system. Yeah, not chromosomes, chromazone system. Big difference there. And one is biology, one is commercial photography. But anyway, yeah, I think we're gonna put all this stuff to good use now, and we're gonna redecorate a little bit because we're not just gonna do the color system, but we're also going to do the other thing that made Collins such a brilliant photographer and a brilliant teacher, and that is how he managed to manipulate what he also thought was the 3D contrast. 3D contrast is basically, in Collins' way of seeing it, is the three parts of a photograph. You have the diffused value, which is measured with the dome port. The diffused value is basically what is the true tonality of the subject in question. So that is the light falling upon the subject. What will that reproduce? What is that going to be reproduced as? Then you have, that's the diffused value, and that has to be constant. Then you have the specular highlight, and to say what a specular highlight is, it is basically a reflection of the light emitter reflected in the subject. That is a specular highlight. And then you have the shadow. So basically what Collins talked about was that the shadows and the speculars can change, but the diffuse has to stay the same. And that goes both for the subject and and then also the background. So for the background and the shadow and the specular, you use the reflected light meter reading with one of these, a spot attachment. And then you have the Minolta meter here with the dome port, because, and here is also such a huge note. The difference between an incident light meter and reading and a reflected light meter reading is that the the incident light meter reading, what you do with the dome, will give you the true tonality of the subject in question. But the reflected light meter with the spot attachment will give you an equivalent 18% tonality. And that's the key to the entire system. If you know what, as Dean Collins put it in the lecture, you need to have, if you want to have control, you need to define a part. What is a part? Well, in photography, we have 18% tonality as our 1 meter, our 1 liter. That's our zero. That's our constant. And it is that any camera that you have that has a built-in light meter will always try to strive for to make the subject 18%. So if you take an image of if I take a incident light meter reading of a white wall, it will give me the meter value to make that wall white. If I put it off a black wall, it will make the meter reading so that that wall will reproduce as black. If it's blue wall, it will give it the tonality of blue that the wall has. But if I would just take off this dome and I put on the reflective attachment and I take a meter reading of a white wall, it will no longer reproduce, the meter result will no longer reproduce a white image, an image of a white wall. What it will give me is an image of an 18% gray wall. So that's the entire premise. This will give me our 1 part. This dome will give me diffused value. This will give me 18%. So what is so good with making it 18%? It's actually quite simple. if you know what a 18% value is, you can double it or you can cut it in half. That means that if you cut 18% into half, you get a 9% gray tone. And if you cut that into half, you get a, what is it? A 4.5% gray tone. That is that the more you cut it in half, the darker it will get. And then you can go from basically photographic black to photographic white, because if you double 18%, you get 36. And so on. So you can go up and down, and that makes it so that you can go from 18% gray as a baseline, and then you can either raise it and lower it. Can you do this with color as well? Yes! So basically with these two attachments, we can basically do anything, and also meter how the difference is from how far they are from each other. Where do we have our specular, and where do we have our diffused, and where do we have our shadow? And Collins was a master of teaching this in a easy to understand manner. So yeah, link in the description again. I think you would, if you're interested in any way, shape or form into enhance your photographic creativity when it comes to light quality, this is the guy to show, to, you know, really have a go at. So yeah, I think that now we're gonna go over to the tabletop and see what we can do. So let's see here now. What do we have here? Well, the setup is fairly simple. We have an SB900 here with the black paper background here. This was bought at a local arts and crafts store. I have it here on a boom stand, and I have it a little bit at an angle. That is because the flash and the background is now parallel to each other, which means that I will get the most homogeneous spreading of light as possible. If I would have the background flat and parallel to the camera and have the light off at an angle, this is a very great piece of lighting advice. You will have a hot spot in one corner, the one that is nearest to the light source, and then you will have it gradually falling off. And that fall off will actually be a little bit of a function of the inverse square law. That is, that the further the source is from the subject, the more area it will actually illuminate and actually diminish in point value, or whatever you want to call it. That is, that the closer, the more concentrated the light, but the quicker it will fall off. The further away, the more diffused it will be, but also it will need more power into in order to come up to a specific guide number, or no, not guide number, a specific F value you want. So what we are going to do now is that we're going to do first a diffused value of this this paper. So in order to do that, we put the dome on the altimeter here in order to get a incident light meter reading. And the settings I have on the camera here now, the Nikon D3S 12 megapixel full frame sensor camera, is that I have it on ISO 200, and since I have some studio light here now as well, I need to use this at a fairly high shutter speed in order to eliminate as much as possible of the ambient light here in the setup. So I have it now on a non-cord setting, and let's see here now, so I don't step on a cable. I put this flash now back to the manual setting, and I will begin somewhere. Let's see here. I would guess we start at 1/16th power on this, and we just put it like so. Press the button there and there. F16, that is actually almost one entire light stop above where we want to be at F11. There is a very good reason why I've chosen F11, but let's see here. Let's go down again then to 1/32nd power. So here we go again. 11.3. So if we push this a little bit back. (8.9). F11. So now we have F11 dialed in. So the incident light meter reading on this black background will now be F11. So we put the camera on the settings that we have specified, 200 ISO at 1/250th of a second and F11. So we're going to put this back from manual to remote, and here we go. And we get a representation of this paper that it is a dark gray, almost black paper. So now we have that one. What can we do with this now when we have a baseline? Well, how about we make it to our one part, as Dean Collins put it so eloquently. We remove the dome port from the meter and replace it with this 5-degree spot meter. So now we have a 5-degree spot meter instead. We turn this back into manual mode, and now we do a reflected, not incident, reflected light meter reading from the center of this paper, and then we see what we get. And we get F56. So in order to get this into what the meter wants to have as F11, which will give us a 18% value, we need to raise the power output here by almost 1.5 stops. So since this one only can go in full stops, let's go to, let's see here, let's see if 1/8 power will do. 11.2, push this back a little bit. F11. So let's see here, 1/8 power. So back to remote, and we go to 1/8 power, and we'll see what we get. And we get an 18% gray. This paper now is reproduced on the camera sensor as an 18% gray tonality. And that is the great difference between using a incident light meter reading and a reflected light meter reading. The diffused value, as Dean Collins puts it, has to be the diffused value. Then all the other parts, the shadows, the highlights, the specular highlights, has to be with this type of reflected reading, because that will give us the control. When we now have specified a 18% baseline, what can we do now? Now we can have some fun with it. Well, we are now at 1/8 power. If I would raise the output of the flash to 1/4 power, I've actually now doubled the amount of output from the strobe. What do we get? Well, we get a doubling from 18%. And if we raise it another stop to, let's see here, I'll go here and go to 1/2 power, we basically have almost pure white. And that is the power of this system. I have basically turned this black background into a white background. Cool, huh? This is basically it. So what we can do then, we were at F8. So now we go to F16. And we get a even darker, and F32. Even darker. And just for the heck of it, we go to F64. And now we are at a very, let's go for it, shall we? 18% divided by half is 9%. Divide 9 by half, you get a 4.5%. And then you have a 2.25%. So you see how this tone graduation just go down? And you can also double it, so you get 36. it is a great system to know and use and utilize, in my opinion. So what can we do now? Well, we have done it now for both a diffused value, and we have done it for 18%, and we have gone above and below with a bare bulb. So we basically have the black paper that we have been, being able to do different gray hues off of. What about we change the color of the strobe instead? So let's take some pieces of tape. Here we have the Cokin P003 red gel or red filter. This was originally made to be put in front of lenses in order to get photographic effects, mostly for black and white, film photography and so on. But now we put it in front of the flash. But now we have changed the value, a constant, because now this filter will actually absorb light coming out of the flash. That means that now we don't have our 18% anymore. Just to show, let's go over to here. Let's see, 1.8 was what we were using, so it gives us a 5.6. So if I erase this, let's see here, no, there and there, and I raise it to not f4 but to half power, and I get f11. So now I know that to get f11 and the equivalent 18% at f11, I need to dial this into, let's see, it goes there and there. And now I have half power. This should give us f11. And now we have a 18% red. But here's a problem. If I now have 18% and I want to go 2 stops brighter, what can I do? Because I can't go 2 stops brighter with the flash power because we're already at half power. We can go 1 step up to full power, but then we're stuck. Well, we chose f11 for a reason, because we're not taking any photograph of anything with depth. So we have a great depth of field now, but we are not utilizing it really. So what can we do? We can open that lens up a bit. So now we have this set at half power at f11. That will give us 18%. But if I go down 1 full f-stop to f8, I will attract the twice amount of light. So now I have a doubling. I have 36%, and we're gonna double again, so we go to f5.6. Even more. So f4. We get an even lighter shade of red. So if we go the other way, so now instead of f11, we go to f16. We get an even darker red. Now we have a halving. Now we are at 9%. And if we want to go to a 8.5%, f22. And if we're gonna go 4 and 1/50th, 1/25th, sorry. Yeah, that's basically as dark as we can go, because now we are basically almost at photographic black. So we go back to f11 and we change this. So now instead of having the red filter, now we have a green filter. So what do we need to do? We need to make our 18%. So in order to do that, go back to manually and let's see what we get. We're at half power. Let's see, one more time. There, and yeah, we're actually still at f11, so it seems like the amount of absorption is about the same between the red and the green. So f11, still go back here, and yeah, we have our F11, and what can we then do? Well, we go to F8. As you can see, the system works, but we're gonna do one more just to show. So let's go back to F11 here, and so I think we show now this system works. So this is the entire process in order to just go from, you know, F11 and then going up and down in f-stops, but having the light constant. It makes it so that we can now generate any shade of these colors we want. And if we do a chart of these, we can basically show it to a art director or any other person that wants us to have a specific now background color. We can just say, yeah, you only have a black and a white paper background. Yeah, pick it. You can just show this chart of colors and say, pick it. Pick the one you want, because as you have clearly now been shown, you can take these images of a black background paper and make it any color you want, simply by utilizing a reflected meter reading, knowing that the reflected meter reading will give you an 18% tonality, and that will give you anything you want. And that was the brilliance of Dean Collins' workshop, that you can make anything you want with this. So now we're actually going to go away and do another of his brilliant parts, which is 3D contrast. Okay, now I've actually changed up a little bit here. Instead now I have the Sigma 105mm macro lens on the camera, on the D3. I still have the blue filter and the black background, but now instead of having it parallel to the flash, I have now put it parallel to the camera. But more about that in a second. What actually has changed more is that I've taken the Sigma 180mm f3.5 macro lens and put this little old tripod ball head, or rather ball control arm on top of it. Why? Because in this setup we're gonna demonstrate Collins's 3D contrast. And I know that if you go and look in the link in the description, or rather the channel or video notes, you will see how he talks about the rubber duck. And how do you make a duck deep? How do you make a deep duck? Well, the reason is the same as making this one. If I would just show give this flash from the front, you will think that this is not a orb, but it's actually just a flat piece. The entire premise with 3D contrast that Dean Collins talks about is that you have a 3D world, but a photograph becomes a 2D representation of a 3D object. But we can use shadows and speculars in relation to the diffused value in order to give you the illusion of depth. So, as he talks about it, he has actually 3 rubber ducks that he shows on a screen. One is painted black, one is painted white, and one is painted red. Here we have actually a red ball actually that we're gonna use as a subject. The entire premise is that if we have a diffused value, which we're gonna take the dome port on our Minolta meter, and we're still gonna use F11 and so on. And we're just gonna take this now and go there, and we go to, let's see, 1/8 power, see what that gives us. I have a snoot on it because I don't want to illuminate the black paper with this flash, I just want to illuminate the ball. So we get F32, which is actually way too bright for what we are needing. We need F11, so we're gonna take this down to, let's see, F32, let's see what that gives us. F16, so we're still a bit too bright, so F1/64 power. 11 and a bit, so let's just pull this a little bit back. f8.9. Let's do so maybe. f11.2. f11. So now we know that this flash has to be at 1/64th power. So we're just going to dial that in. So just P and what do you say? Manual and 1/64th power. So here we go, 1/64th power. And in the background, actually, we're going to do as in the Fine Light Publishing. That we're just going to take now an image of the ball with this snoot from the side in order to see what we get. And what we actually get is a perfect representation of 3D contrast. Almost, but more about that later. We know that this is a round sphere, but what we get is a diffused value that is half of in the middle of the ball, but then we have a specular highlight, a reflection of the snoot, so we have a round white spot that gives us a specular highlight. If I wanted to dull this down, I would maybe take some hairspray or something and dull it, because now it's a very reflective surface, and in order to make a reflective surface not have specular highlights, you need to diffuse it, and you do that by maybe some kind of spray. A couple of things that they use in fine light is they use Armorol to create specular highlights, and they use dry antiperspirant to, create a more diffused value. So that's a little bit of a neat trick that they use. But now, we now know that if I take a reflected meter, that I take this and put this on instead, we're shooting at f11 still. But I want a background where the background right behind the ball, since it's now going to have a gradation from being the hot spot to a more diffused and then shadow, I need to put it a little bit less, or rather higher than f11. As we know, we have f11, we have 16 and 22. So if I put this so I have f16 right behind the ball, we will get a 1 to 2 times change, so it will actually be half as bright as this. So I am now aiming for that this flash has to give us the equivalent f-stop of f16. So there we go, and let's see behind the ball, there we go, and turn it in a little bit more like so. See, we put it like there and there. Turn it in a little bit. f16. So that means that if I photograph this as f6, wait. You see, this is why you need to do this strange thing called thinking. We're not gonna use this at f16. We need an f8, not f16. But that's good, because now we know that if this is f16 and we need it then 2 f-stops darker, we can just go 1/4 power, 1/8 power. Let's see what that gives us. It should give us, let's see. Yeah, it basically gives us f8. So the system works. So 1/8 power. So let's see here. Let's put this as 1/8. And see what we get. Well, we get exactly what we set out to do. If you see the image now on your screen, the only retouching I've done on this is to remove sensor dust, because I know this needs a little bit of a cleaning. But what you have just been shown is the fact of the matter that this ball now has a diffused value, it has a shadow detail, it has a specular highlight which makes it round, and you have a background that is not 18% but is now about 9% in saturation or hue value in relation to the diffused value. I've been able to manipulate the background brightness and color and the fall off of color in relationship to the diffused value of the subject. This is what I thought was so cool about the lectures and everything I've read and seen about Dean Collins. And the man was a genius when it came to lighting, because he didn't just use these types of light manipulators, because he also used, instead of using soft boxes and you know, umbrellas and all of that jazz, which is in itself very great photographic tools that are very great to use. He used scrims, he used you know, light form sheets. I mean, basically it looks like PVC pipe frames that has old bed sheets stretched over them in different types of materials that are able to either diffuse light or reflect light or even block light. So he uses all of these, and he uses gels to a very effective way in order to make his images. So yeah, I think that this is all for me for now. I know this was a long-winded video with probably a lot of jibber jabber, but a little maybe a little bit hint of a content as well. But I thought that just to talk about the ending of photography, I think the man himself from an old interview with Photography World, I think that just listen to Dean Collins, hear what he has to say about photography in general. And this is a man who basically made his living on Kodak Ektachrome. So he was a slide photographer for the most part of his career, but he was really into digital. And he actually talked about the difference between film and digital, his take on it, and I think it's completely 100%, at least when film was on its way out and digital was coming in. He said that the reason to go digital is workflow. In order to have workflow, I mean, you have faxes because of speed, you have word processors, not because they give you a better letter than a handwritten letter, it is because it's faster. Digital photography, it's because it's faster, it saves time, it is a great piece of gear in order to have turnaround. So yeah, but anyway, this is what the man himself had to say about it. So yeah, I've probably had some tidbits about him during this video, but yeah, as always, this is Tobias Bergström from T.B.Photo X1.5 to FX, and I'd like to see you guys in the next video, whenever, however that's gonna be. But see you in the next one, so take care from now on. Bye.
So you really have to step back and kind of look at your world, and sometimes you can see a spotlight hitting somebody on a stage performance, and what you have to realize is that the lighting is producing a mood. Light qualities are taking place, it is affecting you, but there's no photography being taken place. You're not recording that light. You're not putting it onto a two-dimensional piece of solenoid. You're just viewing it. So that's not a photographic process, but lighting is taking place. So if you realize that, if you stop and say, lighting's one thing, photography's another, when you understand both of them to their nth degree of craft, understand full concept of metering, of film design, of optics, of cameras, of movements of view cameras, of millimeters of lenses, what they'll do, if you understand what's called the reflective controls of photography, and then you step into the incident control of photography, light boxes, scrim, umbrellas, bringing an umbrella in close, backing it up, what the physiological effects that take place as you do that, and you understand those two crafts on their own, then when you mesh them together, you become a very creative individual, because creativity is we might say that knowledge is freedom with wings. Once you have that knowledge, you're not afraid to do anything, because you are very assured by your own ability that you're going to come up with the results. And when you throw that piece of 4x5 film down, or 8x10 or 35, you're going, bingo, that's what was in my brain. And I did it. I put it on that piece of film because I took a craft, a science, and I took it into an art. Because I know one thing for sure, you know, through all the philosophy that you want to put on it, that a piece of film has no idea what you feel. But it does have the ability to record as long as you understand how to create it. And once you create it, then you simply record it. And that's a very involved, very disciplined, doesn't happen in a matter of days craft. And if you accept that very long process of educating yourself and accepted that it is going to be tough, only because the benefits are so incredible. I mean, what other industry offers you this incredible instantaneous media of creating a two-dimensional media to communicate to other people about what could have happened or what did happen, to create illusions? What a great, great world to live in. And you get to do that for about 70 years, then check out. I can't think of a better thing.